How much Bitcoin do you need to retire in 10 years? This is a question everyone wants to know. Of course, it will depend on the future price of Bitcoin, what other assets you have in your portfolio, how much you plan to spend during your retirement, and more. But let's run through some hypothetical scenarios with this new retirement calculator to try to estimate how much Bitcoin you need to retire in 10 years. This is not financial advice, and all scenarios are hypothetical and for illustrative purposes only. Please don't make any investments or decline to make any investments based on this video unless you have spoken to your financial advisor. All of the Bitcoin price models used here will eventually be broken, but let's take a look. Okay, so this is a Bitcoin retirement calculator. Let's take a look at some hypotheticals. So for this example, I have it set to the current age of 40. The age that we plan to retire would be age 50. We also expect to live to age 80. For current balances, meaning what is our current wealth, we'll set a pretty simple portfolio where there are $0 in stocks, $0 in bonds, and about 1 Bitcoin today. For this simplistic example, we're going to assume that for the next 10 years, while we're working, we're going to actually save $0 of new wealth, whether that's stocks, bonds, or Bitcoin. We're also going to assume that we have no existing retirement accounts for simplicity. Okay, so for this example, since we're only looking at Bitcoin, or we only have Bitcoin in our portfolio, for the sake of argument, let's assume a hypothetical 17% compound annual growth rate in perpetuity. Under this example, we'll also assume there are $30,000 worth of other income at retirement. That could be Social Security that you've been contributing to for many years. Then we have expected expenses. Let's say we want to spend $100,000 per year at retirement, and that's in today's dollars, so over time this will adjust for inflation. Given all these inputs and assumptions, if you have 1 Bitcoin in your portfolio, you may not have enough to retire. As you can see, you have 1 Bitcoin at retirement, which makes sense. That's what we have saved today in this example. Our projected balance at retirement would be $462,000, and our balance at death would obviously be 0, since this model with these assumptions shows only 6 years of sustainable withdrawals. That's pretty reasonable, but let's adjust this. Let's use Michael Saylor's Bitcoin 24 model as a hypothetical. This kind of changes the results. Now our balance at retirement is $2.5 million, and we're actually able to spend $134,000 per year, inflation adjusted each year after that at retirement. We also have a pretty massive balance at death. But let's go back and change our assumptions again. Let's assume that Bitcoin is actually only going to grow at 17% per year. How much Bitcoin would we need then? Well, let's change this to 1.5 Bitcoin. That bumped up our balance at retirement to $721,000, but we still don't have enough to sustainably retire in just 10 years. Let's assume roughly 2 Bitcoin. Okay, 190,000 gets us pretty close, but we're still not there. Let's go 200,000. Okay, a little more than 2 Bitcoin gets us to a potentially sustainable retirement, assuming a 17% compound annual growth rate for Bitcoin. That was pretty cool, and you can see how changing the assumptions and inputs can drastically change the calculations. Anyone can play around with this free calculator on unchained.com/calculator. I helped build it, so if you have any feedback on it, let me know. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you next time.